live recording this right now. It is Monday, August 3rd, sometime in the afternoon here on the East Coast. Solo show for me today. Chase will be back on tomorrow. We'll have 2 pods coming out this week and maybe a third if we get some other news coming out. But wanted to get a quick pod out there to get an update on what all this crap that's going on, and you're a fan trying to figure out so is this guy eligible? Is this what is Jaxon Kohler coming to BYU? Is he not? Is Keba Keita coming? I'll dive into that all here on this podcast right here. Chase and I are going to talk about fits and breakdowns and some more of this stuff as well as once we get a little bit more info as well on tomorrow's show. But anyhow, let's get into today's pod solo. Let's do it. So, over the weekend, a bunch of mumbo-jumbo legal bullcrap that a lot of us, including myself, dummies, just don't understand. I'm here trying to figure out these court documents. I'm a college basketball fan. I do a college basketball podcast. I should not have to read through court documents. I don't understand this stuff. There's a reason I didn't go to law school at BYU. I'm too dumb for that. But we got in there. We did our homework. We're going to simplify this thing, and we're going to make sure you guys know what on earth is going on. So anyhow, late last week, I think it was late Friday afternoon, a judge in Colorado said, that's it. 5th-year guys are eligible. This ruling goes throughout the country. So all of a sudden, guys like Keba Keita, guys like Jaxon Kohler, Darian Williams, who's at Texas Tech and NC State, all those guys who graduated in 2022 of high school are all of a sudden eligible. And so news starts breaking out. Guys are starting already committing to other places. Guys are saying, I'm in the portal. So, RJ Godfrey already committed to Arizona during this weekend. But then, come Sunday, we get a clarification and a memo sent out from the NCAA that says, look, just because this ruling is in effect, yes, these 5th-year guys are eligible at the moment, but does not mean they can transfer. They can return to their former team. So a player like Keba Keita can come back, but he can't hit the portal. And so this creates chaos because now it's like, okay, all these guys can come back, but they're stuck. A lot of these rosters, Michigan State, for example, with Jaxon Kohler, they already have 15 guys. They're already tapped out. They don't have any more roster spots available. Now, you can always kick off a walk-on, buy out an NIL contract, whatever you got to do. If you want to get a guy as good as Kohler on your roster, you can make that happen. But I don't think Tom is that kind of guy and doesn't necessarily want to do that. And maybe Kohler doesn't want to go back to Michigan State. Maybe they want to look elsewhere. And then, so it creates this whole entire disaster that these guys are sitting there like, wait, all these other guys got to hit the portal earlier on in the season. Why don't we get to hit the portal? Well, don't be afraid because there is a ruling going on in California. We should get a decision any moment now, any day, that is basically going to do somewhat of what the Colorado lawsuit did, where this is going to open up a portal for these guys now. And the only thing stopping this now at this point is there's the counter lawsuits, there's be appeals, and all this mumbo jumbo. Once again, are 2 things. One, the NCAA is going to try to appeal all this stuff and it's called a stay. And it's basically the goal is to try and drag this out through February and March to where basically this case just doesn't matter anymore because by the time you make that ruling in February, March, it's over. Those guys can't play anymore. The season's already done. It doesn't matter. And so that will create a whole other can of worms because if that happens, then those 2022 guys are saying, oh, that was unfair. We should have, we were ruled eligible, but we didn't get to rule at this point, then we're going to sue again. So the NCAA is in this impossible spot. The NCAA also has the bill going through Congress right now, which is the Protect College Sports Act. And I promise I'll be done soon because this stuff is as annoying for me as it is for you listening to this right now. So the NCAA has the Protect College Sports Act, right? And essentially that would just eliminate all this. The Colorado stuff would go away, the California ones. Now, new ones may come up, but for the most part, you'd have stability and have a clear-cut thing that these schools can go by saying, look, those 2022 guys, they're done. It's over. We're on to the new thing. It wipes out that. Also, a one-time transfer rule would be enacted. There's a bunch of other stuff with the Protect College Sports Act. But that something has to just be decided here soon because now you're already having sports like women's soccer is already starting up, I think, as soon as this week right now. And so all this stuff has to be decided soon. And so these things are getting expedited like crazy in court. Well, the Protect College Sports Act that the NCAA has been kind of relying on and begging for years and years and years, the Senate is on summer recess or whatever on August 7th. So this stuff has to be done ASAP right now. Now, with all that being said, all that crap right now, what is it right now? What is going on as of Monday, August 3rd in the afternoon here on the East Coast? Who is eligible? What do I need to know? Right now, Kohler, Keba, the guys BYU's been linked to, they are eligible right now. But they are not eligible to hit the portal. So technically, if they want to play college basketball again, Kohler has to go to stay at Michigan State if there's a roster spot for him. Keba has to stay at BYU once again if there's a roster spot for him. And so then this California ruling, by all accounts, the way it's being reported, it seems like this is going to go through. The players are going to win the case, and the portal is going to be open. And then BYU can get in and start trying to get Kohler or get a transfer or whoever it may be. So, as of now, that's what it is. It's going to change probably 10 more times. I've had to watch all this and read about all the stupid court documents and everything. And all to say is this is a disaster, and even a lot of coaches in this country have no idea what's going on to this point. So, now that we've established that, what does this mean for BYU right now? So, we're going to go with the assumption that the Protect College Sports Act is not coming in right now. If that happens, BYU is going to have to go get another international big, and that's the only way they're going to be able to make it through next season with another backup five. Like, it's great they got your Boniak because you don't know what the deal is, with these court rulings right now. But as long as he's assuming, because the contract's already been bought out and everything, assuming he's eligible and all that goes well, then BYU does have at least one center. So that is huge they got him. But if the Protect College Sports Act comes in, their only chance is finding another random international guy or some random portal guy that hasn't randomly been picked up yet that I haven't heard of. And so hopefully for BYU's sake, the Protect College Sports Act doesn't pass through until later on. But for right now, what does it mean for BYU and their links to Keba Keita and Jaxon Kohler? I know this has been a lot of rambling. We're going to get to the basketball, and we're going to get to the points right now. Let's start off with Jaxon Kohler, because I think this is the sexier story everybody wants to talk about, and what the just nonstop links to it online. John Rothstein puts out a report over the weekend that Kohler has told him that Kentucky, Kansas, BYU, and Michigan State were in contact with them. From what I'm hearing lately, it doesn't seem like the Michigan State stuff has really progressed as much, and same with the Kansas ones. They're still going to be talking to everyone. Once again, money changes everything. Everything can change on a dime. That is not to say it is done with Michigan State. It is done with Kansas. Anything can happen with the amount of money that is being splashed around in this sport. But Jaxon Kohler's dad, also said they're going to talk to Alabama. They said Kentucky reached out, a few weeks ago. They were the first school to reach out, according to him. And so, how does this work for BYU? Assuming the California rule comes into place and BYU and Jaxon Kohler can hit the portal, it seems like it's going to come down to a 2-horse race between BYU and Kentucky, is what this is seeming like. And yet again, it's hilarious that we're doing this in college basketball now, recruiting battles every year between BYU and Kentucky. We had Rob Wright earlier this offseason, and now we got it again potentially with Jaxon Kohler. There are reports out there that Jaxon Kohler could demand upwards of $4 million. Now, my problem with that is I'm not exactly sure who at this point would have $4 million to spend on a player, because if BYU had $4 million to spend on a player or a big man earlier on in the cycle, maybe they would have used it on someone else. But when a player like Jaxon Kohler becomes available, BYU and Kentucky donors, they can say, oh, well, now that I didn't know he was available, yeah, I'm willing to write a check for that. So that's why that price can go up. I think $4 million is a crazy number. I don't think that's going to be the actual number when it's all said and done. We probably won't ever find out the actual number when it's all said and done. But $4 million is being reported out there. I think it's probably a bit closer to $2 million, and that would be an absolute steal in this circumstance for a guy of Kohler's ability. But where BYU is in trouble with all this is Kentucky has money. Kentucky has a lot of money, and Kentucky had the money for Costa Rica, an international guy who ended up committing to UCLA. They clearly had enough money set aside for him. They were recruiting him very late into the process. They missed out on him. They have not signed another player at this point. Now, there's other guys in the 5-5 thing. Kentucky's heavily linked to Auburn and former UCF forward Keyshawn Hall. That could be an option for them. It might not be Kohler. Who knows to that point? But what we do know is Kentucky does have the money. And in this day and age, at this point, the money kind of says everything in these recruitments. It's two things with recruiting nowadays. It's how much am I getting paid, and how are you getting me to the league? And BYU's been able to answer that question very, very well the last few years. But maybe they don't. But they probably don't have the level of money that Kentucky has at this point. So you're looking at a recruitment where can BYU still get Jaxon Kohler, even though Kentucky's likely going to outbid BYU on him? And I still believe the answer is yes, and it comes down to one thing. How serious is Jaxon Kohler about going to the NBA? And I'm not on here to negatively recruit against Kentucky or Mark Pope. I actually like Mark Pope. I actually don't have a problem with him. I think Kentucky actually will be pretty decent this year, and I think they're going to be better than what some people think they will be. But if your goal is to get to the NBA and get featured in a role that puts you in the best possible position and showcases yourself, I think BYU is the better answer for Jaxon Kohler in this case. Now, if you're like, hey, I don't know how realistic the NBA is for me. I got one last chance of making a big payday here. I got to take the most amount of money. And I would totally respect that because, look, man, there are certain guys out there in this portal cycle, in this 5-5, that are like, man, I know I'm not making it to the NBA. Donovan Dent, for example. Donovan Dent retired from basketball. He's like, dude, I don't want to do the pro grind. I made like $2.5 million at UCLA last year. Like, I'm not going to go play for $60,000 in Europe next season. Like, I'm good. I've done that. And now the 5-5 comes into effect. Donovan's like, dude, I'm back. I will go wherever is needed. Oh, you guys I'm getting offers of $1.52 million, $2.5 million. Yeah, I'll go wherever. Yeah, I'll play basketball again. I'm not retired. I'm on retire. That was the quickest out of retirement I've ever seen. And so, but with a guy like Kohler, I think Kohler does have NBA aspirations. And to be honest, BYU's the better fit for that, if that's the case, if you want to go to the NBA. And also, if you bring in Kohler, and Chase and I have talked about this before as well in the last couple episodes, discussing him as well. But I think for either of these teams, whether it's Kentucky or BYU, I think if you add Jaxon Kohler, I think that makes either of these teams a second weekend level team. And maybe you can make some noise. Maybe you can get hot and go on a run, and all of a sudden, maybe you're in Detroit next April. Who knows? But this seems like this is the scenario at this point. It seems like it's coming down to BYU and Kentucky once again. It'll be very, very, very interesting what Kohler decides, because essentially at BYU, you're going to get featured a bit more. You're going to play a bigger role. At Kentucky, you're probably going to end up being about the fourth option on that Pope roster. But if your goal is to shoot a bunch of threes, Pope's going to put you in the right spots where you and Milan Momcilovic are just going to be chucking threes. Pope, his goal, if you remember his time at BYU, every single game, his goal is to shoot at least 30 threes a game. Now, he wasn't able to get to that last year because he recruited a team that absolutely could not shoot the ball. But if he gets Kohler, who's a 39% three-point shooter, Milan Momcilovic almost shot 50% from three last year, you would have the guys in place to be able to start playing the system that he wants to play, and will have a bit better talent than what he had in his last year at BYU as well. So I would be very high on this Kentucky team, especially if Kohler goes there. But regardless, it's down to BYU and Kentucky. If you said, all right, Gio into your head, what do you think? I think it's so 50-50. So whatever I say would be a joke and it wouldn't matter. I think this is a 50-50 recruitment. I'm going slightly in BYU, but I'm not confident in it whatsoever. I would not put out one of those crystal balls or whatever it is, or the predictors for it. We will see. But I think this will happen very fast, especially if the California ruling comes into effect and everything. Heck, he might even commit to one of these places before that ruling goes into effect. We've already seen multiple guys do it already as we're recording this podcast right now, Monday afternoon. So Kohler, Kentucky or BYU. And I think Kohler is BYU's top priority right now, especially with his talent and how special he is and how he can change the way this BYU team plays. But then there's a Keba Keita question, because all of a sudden Keba Keita is sitting there, a guy you know very, very well, a guy who throughout the majority of his time as BYU, you loved him. He was this defensive presence, freak athlete, but had a shaky second half of his senior season. I guess you can call it his fourth season. I don't know what a senior is anymore at this point, but last season he wasn't quite good enough as a defensive anchor for this BYU team. I don't know if there was injury concerns, chemistry problems, whatever it may have been with Keba. We don't know what happened. And would BYU still want to take him back going into next season? Now, if the current rules stay in place and they say, look, you can bring back your fifth-year guys, you're calling Keba Keita up immediately and saying, all right, well, if we know the portal isn't going to open and the College Sports Act or whatever isn't going through, and this is just how it is at this point, you're calling Keba Keita up so fast and saying, get on this roster ASAP. We need you. But if you're having to sit there and decide between, okay, we already have your Boniak, do you want Kohler or do you want Kada? And if you have the money, I think you have to go after Kohler. I know it's tough business, but just the way Keba played towards the end of last season is just frankly wasn't quite good enough for what BYU needs if they want to compete and eventually try to make a Final Four. So, but once again, back to the legal BS. Everything stays the same. Kada is eligible. Kada is the only option that BYU could really get at this point, other than a random international guy or whatever. And he's not signed a pro deal as of when I'm recording this right now. So, if Keba Keita were to come back, though, I'd welcome it. If you couldn't get Kohler, if you're in this situation right now where you go, look, we're going after Kohler. If we can't get Kohler, you go get Keba. It's really just not that bad of a situation to be in it with BYU, especially if you remember how this was 2 weeks ago, before your Boniak signed, before they had a center. When people were doing previews for way too early college basketball previews, and they're saying Hadim Boop's playing the starting 5 role for this BYU team. So this is a much better situation. Either way, I think this is just a massive win if you could bring in Keba or Kohler. But Kohler has to be the priority here if you're BYU, because he's so talented. He can stretch the floor for you, and he has real, true basketball experience. And obviously Keba has that as well. But he was winning in the Big 12. He was the best player on Michigan State's front court last year, averaged 13 and 9, can really change who you are offensively. Now, defensively, are there going to be questions with this BYU team next year? Probably, but we'll address those when we get there. Kohler would be a home run for BYU once again. But either way, if this shakes out, the only thing that I think that could really screw BYU right now, as we're recording this, there's court cases coming out all the time. The only thing I think that could really screw BYU right now is if this Protect College Sports Act comes through, and that's it. You're not even looking at Kohler. You're not looking at Keba. You're just looking at, an international guy and your Boniak, like I've said before in this podcast. So, but yeah, Chase and I will get into more of this tomorrow on tomorrow's pod. I want to put out a quick thing here because I think everybody's a bit confused right now with what's going on. I hope I was able to give you some clarity on this situation and how it's going right now and the multiple reports and rumors and everything. We hope to have more info for you on tomorrow's show about how the Kohler and Keba recruitments have developed and what things are leaning towards. So make sure to tune into that. Follow and subscribe at Church Ball Pod on everything on all socials. The Church Ball Pod YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button on there. Like this video if you're watching right now. Field of 68 Podcast Network on the YouTube channel. At Karter BA, at Chase_Rogers0. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye-bye.